Hi, I'm Evie, and welcome to Evie's Acres, where we encourage you to grow a garden and raise and prepare your food as naturally as possible. In my last video, I showed you the first several steps I follow to process broiler chickens, including preparing the chickens, preparing the work area, restraining and then severing the jugular of a chicken, scalding the chicken, and then eviscerating the chicken before rinsing it and storing it in an ice water bath. The remaining steps in this process include quality control and then storing the chicken either whole or separate into parts. The majority of this video will include footage on how I separate my chickens before storage, and I will also include some footage on how I sometimes prepare a chicken to store it whole in my freezer. At this stage, I'm doing the quality control step where I'm going to examine each of the chickens, make sure I've removed all of the feathers, any guts that I don't want to be in the chicken. Those two coolers that I was using earlier, this one is the one that contains all the chickens right now. It's the ice bath that has just a little bit of vinegar in it. Here is the other cooler. This cooler has been cleaned out. It's the one where they had the initial vinegar bath. Right now it has been cleaned out and replenished with fresh water, and I believe I used about 3 or 4 bags of ice. So the plan is I'm going to remove one chicken at a time, and on this half of the table pretty much I will do what I call my final quality control. I'll make sure that there are no remaining feathers or what appear to be like little hairs. I'll make sure that there are no guts or any other innards that are still in there that shouldn't be. If I happen to miss a lung or something, I'll make sure to remove those things at this time. Then I'll rinse it off, and on this side, this is where I will cut. This is where I'll split the chicken into parts and then put it inside of these containers that are right here. I do have a few knives here. That's really my backup. These two are the main ones that I'm going to use to do this final quality control and separation of the different parts of the chicken. While removing the chicken from the cooler, I'm just making sure to get all of the ice from the inside. You can see here that I cut a little too close here, and it looks like it got ripped in a couple places, but that's okay. The meat is still fine. Like I said, I'm not planning to store whole chickens in my freezer, so I'm not concerned about this not being pretty or preserving any of this skin. But if you did want to preserve the entire whole chicken, I just wanted to point out that these little yellow pieces right here, while they're not aesthetically nice to look at, they're not harmful. So if you wanted to just leave that on, that's fine. Or you can see that they simply rub off too. I'll just take those off. Now, because these chickens have been in ice water for about 45 minutes, maybe close to an hour at this point, they have reached a point known as rigor mortis, where the muscle fibers have stiffened due to the cold environment in which they've been, due to the cold water. And that's actually a good thing, in my opinion, when it comes to cutting apart a chicken. I prefer to have that. I think for some people they don't like that, but I don't find it to be a problem. One of the key things to checking your chicken is to look for, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it here, but there's like a little hair there that I just removed. They're just a little couple pieces of feathers that were still stuck in this one. But generally speaking, this one looks really good. Like I said, it does look like I cut a little too much in certain places as far as the skin goes, but again, that's okay because I will be cutting this one apart. So I prefer to start with the quarters, the legs and the thighs. And one of the key things that I learned when I was taught how to properly process chickens is to use gravity to your advantage. You want to basically cut. You kind of want to look for a line of demarcation. So it's kind of hard to see with this wing in the way, but let's see if I can point it out on the camera. So here on over, this is basically marking the line of where the muscle meets the bone for the corner. So I'm just going to gently cut along the skin here first, just to see if I can get a clear view. Okay, and you can see that better here now, right here and along here. Now, in order to remove this from the body, you can easily just sort of move it to the side, and you'll hear that crack. It's just the joint separating as the joint separates, and as those, they're not filaments, ligaments, as those ligaments come apart, that's what you'll hear there. So I like to hold my chicken and let the weight of the rest of the chicken help guide, along with following, like I said, that line of the meat. Because again, you do not want to use these knives to cut into bone. That will dull them very quickly, and nobody wants to work with a dull knife, especially when processing. So again, here you can see the joint right here, that knuckle. Okay. Don't want to cut the bone or the knuckle itself, but I want to cut around it. Now here we have a leg quarter. There's the skin. I'm going to remove the skin from this one because we primarily eat ours skinless. Also, thankfully our dogs enjoy eating the skin, so they will have that as a treat at some point. So generally you can just kind of rip that off. If you need to use your knife, just very gently cut along the meat, not into the meat. It's kind of hard to describe how to do that. See how close I can get with the camera. See that better. It is slippery, so you have to be careful. Now, if I were preparing this to sell to a customer, I would definitely be much more concerned about making sure that everything looked neat and that there was nothing amiss. But generally speaking, to me, that looks fine. So I'm just going to set this to the side. Again, this has all been pre-cleaned, so this is a clean surface that I'm working on here. I'm going to do the same on the other side. You'll see that I'm facing the chicken in a different direction compared to what I did initially. That's just to give you a different view. This isn't necessarily how I normally do it, but I wanted to be able to give you another view of this process. separate the wings from the body, following the same general pattern of bending the joint to separate the wing from the body, and then using my knife to cut any ligaments, muscles, skin, and blood vessels that may still be connecting the wing to the body. Generally just using my physical strength to separate them, and then using gravity to give myself a better visual of exactly where I can sever those ligaments and tissues rather than cutting into the bone. I completely remove the skin before removing the breast meat, and that is because I find it a lot easier to manage without the skin in the way. Now I'm going to separate the breast meat from the carcass, and once all of that skin is removed, you'll see that there is a line right down the middle. I make a bit of a slit sort of down the middle along that line that you see. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to begin using my fingers to tease the meat away from the bone. You can use the knife more so than I'm using it, but I prefer to use my fingers because I feel like I'm able to get more of the meat off the bone that way. And so I'm just teasing the meat away from the bone, and then as you'll see, it'll become more and more separated. I'm also separating the bone from the wishbone that's there towards the neck of the bird. And again, just teasing the meat away from the bone. And still doing my best to follow any line of demarcation I see between the muscle and any bone and or tendons. Here I am ripping that meat off of the bone. Now I'll do the same thing on the other side. Once I've removed the leg quarters, wings, and breast meat from the carcass, then at that point I ensure that I have as much, if not all, of the skin off of the carcass as possible. I try to remove as much meat as possible as well, because my goal is to use the carcass for bone broth. Now, our first chicken parsed out into these bags, and this container, this bag. Now, I want you to rinse off the table and repeat 5 more times. And so this is one of the methods that you can use to store your chicken after you've processed it. I tend to put mine immediately in ice water, and then once I'm done with all of the chickens, then I will recheck them again just to make sure that there are no holes in the bags or anything like that, and then I just store them in my freezer until I'm ready to use them. If you decide you want to store your chickens whole, you can use these types of bags. They come in, I bought this in a pack of 100, and you basically would place your chicken in with the legs facing upward. You'd shrink it down around the chicken as much as possible. Place a straw like a plastic or metal straw in between, usually in the cavity, but not touching any part of the skin or inner part of the chicken. Then you place it in a pot of hot water, about 190 degrees, for about 3 to 4 seconds. And in that period of time, the amount of heat from the water will cause air that's inside of the bag to escape through that straw, and you can then, it'll basically shrink wrap this around the chicken, and then you would quickly take that straw out, wrap a zip tie around the end, and you'd be all set.
In case you missed the announcement in the last video, make sure to check out the link in the description and in the first pinned comment to join the waitlist for the Farm to Freezer course, in which I'll be describing in even greater detail how to go from raising broiler chickens on pasture to getting them processed and in your freezer for your family's consumption. One of the best ways to support our channel is to subscribe and share this video. And as always, be blessed and be a blessing to others. Until next time.